Because we're tired, we're exhausted, you had a bad day, you had 2 bad days, you had 3 bad days. That's not a mental illness. That's life.
The more you want, the more you have to do, which means the more you have to become.
Life does not stop asking for more. If you see responsibility as a burden, how can it be a catalyst for growth?
There's more people going to therapy than ever,
Ever.
but it's still not working.
70% of the population lives with a socialized mind. Most people will not be able to meet the modern day demands. People say I'm protecting my mental health. It's the silliest thing to say to me.
Most people are mentally soft. People go through situations and become worse. They constantly look at themselves as victims.
We all have the freedom to choose.
I think that's false.
Can we just talk about what mental health is?
It's your responsibility to heal yourself, not my responsibility to walk around with triggers.
People have all this language now, and it has no meaning anymore.
Depression rates went higher because they start diagnosing people with depression.
You don't get to decide how people interpret the world.
You believe in gaslighting people? What are the most toxic things that you see about relationships?
The relationship didn't work out. That doesn't mean that he's a narcissist.
Mental toughness is at an all-time low. This is what you want to feel, or this is what you're gonna feel.
We don't have the ability to hold multiple perspectives. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
And you gain acceptance without understanding.
The mental health industry lacks a great deal of wisdom.
Peace family, it's 19 Keys. Thank you for watching High Level Conversations. We want to continue to be the best show in the world, so we need your support for that. So if you enjoy this conversation, if you enjoy the value of this channel and the rest of these High Level Conversations, please help spread the word. If you haven't already, please leave a 5-star review, and the best reviews we will screenshot and post on our High Level Conversation page, and you will win one of many gifts that we have. We also need you to like and we need you to comment so we can be at the top of the algorithm. We're building out the platform that's going to take the culture forward. And every conversation is a piece of the puzzle so that we can elevate the consciousness of the world. Whether you're a small business or a big business, we have different packages that you can come in and help sponsor episodes so we can take things to the highest level. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but if this is an exciting offer for you, then go to 19keys.com/HLC so that you can join the high level team. I appreciate you for being here and I appreciate you for watching this episode. Continue to stay high level. Peace, family.
The world is closing in. Everything is happening. Anxiety is being filled into every single space in your life. You're stressed out about every little thing that happens. You're tired of being gaslit. You can't find a safe space. There's narcissists everywhere in the world. If you learn how to utilize this language to sustain your mental health identity. Today I have somebody that's going to challenge all the things that you believe around mental health, the stigmas that you have in your mind, and the way that you see other people, the so-called boundaries that you set up in your life, and whether you need them whatsoever. The very perspective in which you live by, perhaps is all false, or maybe it's real. Today, I want to give you a trigger warning that there is no such thing as being triggered. We're going to get into somebody that's actually going to help you with the capacity to deal with life as real life. Not trying to run away from it, not trying to live a soft life, but just to live life itself. This idea that life should be fit into this perfect box or that people are doing something to you instead of having the resilience to be able to go through life and not only just come back to form, but be better. We don't talk about evolution enough. And I think that this very conversation is going to evolve the mental health paradigm to where we need to be to deal with the complexities of our new reality. I have somebody who is challenging coaches, experts, and clients all around the world about what is mental health and especially what is mental illness. I have none other than Raquel, the capacity expert. She's going to be a name that you all will know for a very long time because today she's going to challenge not only who you think you are, but what you think you know about yourself and how you feel about the world. Because maybe you don't have a mental health issue. Maybe the issue is how you see mental health. And we're going to jump right into it, into the middle of the conversation with Raquel. I want to get into what most people probably are feeling, right? which is there's a lot of people that are successful but unfulfilled.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people who thought that success would make them fulfilled. A certain amount of money, a partner, a job, right? A certain status, a award, whatever it may be. And yet they get to that place and they feel empty, right? Why do you think we have such an unfulfilled society wherein, especially in America, we probably have more successful people than anywhere else in the world?
I think it's spiritual based. I think that it's much easier for people to shut off that component of themselves because I think people are afraid to lose.
Mm,
People spend more time focusing on what they have to lose rather than what they have to gain. And it goes back to being okay with discomfort, right? Like you have to have a relationship with discomfort and uncertainty. If not, you're not going to challenge those feelings of unfulfillment because I'm winning right now, so I can learn to rationalize or find the silver lining in life. And I'm just going to make it do what it do. So I say it's the new modern day of survival mode.
hmm
It just this now you just have successes versus I work, I take care of my kids the way that the generation before us may have done it. And today it's just a new way of operating in survival mode, which is why people still constantly feel like they're in the rat race.
mm, mm. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I think especially in the age where this quote keeps coming up about the attention economy of we have a wealth of information and a poverty of attention, and with we being overstimulated, right? It's like even you at a job and you have so many tasks to do, you start to get anxiety about it, right?
Mhm.
You don't know where to focus first. And a lot of people don't have good mechanisms that allow them to like organize themselves. Number one, to decrease that anxiety, to be clear and focused, right? So if you will, what are some mechanisms when it comes from a person that's hey, death scrolling right now on the phone, searching for more dopamine hits because their life is not fulfilling,
Yeah.
right? So what are some ways that you find that work for people to gain more focus?
The first thing that comes to my mind is you're going to have to do the work because I think that society has sold a bunch of mechanisms, right? And mechanisms are a temporary relief to feeling comfortable in the
Hmm.
moment, right? So I can tell you that if you're overloaded right now, right? Take a moment, take a break, breathe. But you can't breathe your way out of unfulfillment, right? You're
Mm,
gonna have to go deeper and ask whatever those questions are. And I think what I see today is everybody wants to figure out how to strategize their life. You can't strategize your life. At some point, you have to transition from the how do you do something to the who am I? What is it that truly matters to me? Because if you never ask those questions, you'll continue to find yourself again on that rat race. So, and when you go back to this whole concept of being overloaded and the anxiety and those things kick in, one of the things that I don't think we talk about enough is that's just a sign of your cognitive ability. Like cognitively, you have not developed to respond to what's in front of you. And that's
mm,
why I speak about capacity because most people think about capacity from the standpoint of how much you can hold, how much you can carry. And it has absolutely nothing to do with that. Capacity is about how do you take what you did yesterday and integrate it into today. So if I think about a jar, right? If I have water in it, right? It's not about filling it up. It's taking this, adding this piece to it, taking a rock, taking a pebble, adding that, and all of that represents your experiences. And most people don't slow down enough to really zone in that. What we do is we talk about our childhood. We'll say, because we want certainty, right? Well, childhood tells me that I'm showing up as a perfectionist because of X.
hmm
Uh, I'm overloaded because I became a mom 6 months ago and I just got a promotion. It has nothing to do with that. Like every time that life demands something new from you, it asks of more of you. And I don't think that people have an appreciation for that. Like I always tell people, like, if you're going to sustain and live a fulfilling life, you're gonna have to get okay, become okay with the truth that life does not stop asking for more. Like
mm,
it's always going to be asking you for more because that's just the way that it is. When you think about social media, AI, like s- that is life asking you for more. And by more is saying grow,
yeah.
grow.
I look at that as going from you know, we have a culture that is really steeped in survival, but the focus should be evolution, right?
Absolutely.
So when you're constantly evolving, these are natural, right? Increased capacity, more resilience, right? Endurance, right? Going through adversity. You seek challenge. But when you're surviving, you don't want more challenge. You
Nope.
want to lessen your capacity. You want to lessen the more things that are coming at you, less things so that you can become more comfortable.
We want the things though, because
Yeah,
you asked, do you want the money? Yes.
yeah,
But do you want the problems that come?
yeah,
Not really, but I
yeah,
want the money. You want the kids? Yeah, but
yeah.
I don't want sports, soccer. So we want the things. We're just not willing to do the work
Mm,
that comes with those things. Like you can ask for more and not expect life to ask for more from you. Like
yeah.
to me, again, it seems like common sense, but to other
A
people, it's
direct correlation between the more you want, the more you have to do, which means the more you have to become.
exactly.
And then the becoming part is what most people don't really understand because they look at results versus what actually is the process. The person that creates the goal doesn't mean that they're capable of achieving it.
Yep.
That means you have to become the person, which is reading, learning, study, experiences, emotions, ups and downs. I think that goes to the quote of be careful what you wish for,
Yeah.
right? Because once you wish for something and you get granted that, God say, you want money? Okay, well, you know what come with that is this responsibility.
Yeah.
You feel me? Then this headache, then all of these things. And you're like, I just wanted the money without it, but that's not the way the world works.
No. And I always talk about, from a capacity standpoint, responsibility. Like people don't look at their relationship. We will look at our relationship with our friends, our partners, but I'm like, do you look at relationship with self?
Mm,
I think we do that now, but I just think we have a very low level of understanding of what it means to be very self-aware. But your relationship with responsibility, if you see responsibility as a burden, how can it be a catalyst for
mm,
growth? Like
mm.
responsibility pushes you to the next level. And that's what when I'm working with clients, I'm like, when you hear me say the word responsibility, what comes to mind? And most people, first thing they say is obligation. Like, but you have choice. And I always remind people, like, we all have the freedom to choose. Like, no one's making you do any of these things. Like, so where's the appreciation or the gratitude for responsibility? Because that is the thing that could propel you forward.
So free will, right?
Yes.
And using that agency and free will as a determining factor to how your life turns out. Like, I believe destiny is choice, right? A great destiny is just you making great choices. The idea of we doing, people always talk about do what you love, right? And I say do the thing you hate though to do what you love. Because if you don't become good at something, you can't live a life you love, right? Which is, it's like I relate that to leg day in the gym. Most people don't want to do leg day. But when you do it, it actually strengthens your will. So
Mhm.
therefore, when you don't want to do something, right, you still have that willfulness to go do it. And the reality of it is most people are mentally soft, right? Mental toughness is at an all-time low.
That
So
part.
we want things to stop happening versus us to get good at what's happening,
Yeah.
right? And to deal with those things that's happening. So I want to talk about this idea of, right, the mental stigmas that people attach to themselves as identities, right? That you've talked about a lot that I think is an issue in society.
So before we do that, I can we just talk about what mental health is?
Yeah.
Because
Mental health versus mental illness. Yeah.
yes, like I think that that is so important because I don't, when people say I'm protecting my mental health, it's the silliest thing to say to me. And
Mm,
it's silly because what you're saying is I'm protecting how I currently think, feel, and behave today. And if you protect how you think, feel, and behave today, you don't create space for optimization. You don't create space for those new things that you're asking for. Now, I will say that life is about seasons and chapters, so I can understand if people feel like they may need to retreat. But long term, that thinking that your mental health is fragile is false. Like your
mm.
mental health isn't a thing, it's something that you use, it's a vehicle to expanding your capacity. So I hear people talk about their mental health as if it's this thing, or, as if it's this, right?
Yeah, like a battery.
Yeah, like there is something that you're taking care of, and when you retreat, you're no longer taking care of your mental health. And the mental health industry has, I don't know how it's become what it is today, but I do know that the understanding has lost itself, right? And to me, it's common sense. Like, if you know that you're exhausted and tired, take a break. I don't think a therapist should have to tell an adult that. That's just I mean, I have a 10-year-old, and when he's tired on the soccer field, he says, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's this misunderstanding of mental health. We all have mental health. And your mental health is supposed to be challenged, because if your mental health is challenged, then that means that you grow. And that's what therapists were put in position for. We are experts in understanding that as you go through life, you're going to experience these transitory issues that have the ability to plague how you think, feel, and behave, because life is full of change. Somewhere along the way, we've become mental health experts. And I say, we're not mental health experts. That means that I would know how you should be thinking, feeling, and behaving at all times. This person, that person, that's just, it's unrealistic. So I say that we are experts in helping people navigate those transitory issues that they're gonna, whether it's you lose a job, you decide to have children, death, you start to experience unfulfillment, burnout. Like, we expect those things. So those are normal, because everybody likes to call life trauma now too. Those are normal experiences that are supposed to challenge your mental health, because life wants to stretch you. Now, mental illness, you and I may never experience a mental illness, because there's a such thing as prevention rather than intervention, right? I understand mental health, so I know that if I decide to start a new job, I'm going into a new environment, which means that it has the ability to shake up my world. So I may seek some support, or I've developed enough that I don't necessarily need that. Mental illness, on the other hand, is when we start to talk about it, it is depression and it is anxiety. I want to use anxiety, for example, because when I was training for this mental health program, I came across somebody that really lived with anxiety, and I was like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
This is anxiety. Like, you can't go to work.
Yeah.
Like, you've gotten your education, and it's difficult for you because you thought you saw a spider last night, and now it's like, to me, I couldn't process it. When you think about mental illness, your ability to function, to cope, it robs you of that. That's the difference. Because we're tired, we're exhausted, you had a bad day, you had 2 bad days, you had 3 bad days. That's not a mental illness.
Yeah.
That's life. So, and I think we use those words interchangeably, and they're not. Like, we have to make the separation, because people that actually live with schizophrenia or a bipolar, they don't walk around and say, I have bipolar.
Right.
I have bipolar. I live with bipolar. They don't. In fact, they're the people that are in therapy, and they're saying, why am I not normal?
Right.
That's what they're saying. And you're still trying to figure out how to help them, because there's only but so much that you can really do. So that's important. I get worked up when I talk about that, because I'm like,
I think it's real. I think people do over label themselves, and then I think you shrink yourself when you do that.
You do.
Right? Because the human mind and the capabilities, we're almost limitless, but then you shrink it to these small little labels of this mental health battery that you have per day, which is what it becomes. So you decrease your capacity to this, and it becomes a reality just through the placebo effect. This is what you want to feel, well, this is what you're going to feel.
Exactly.
This is what you think you can do, well, this all you can do.
Yep.
So there's a lot of people, they statistically say 19.1% of the U.S., right, has anxiety. But not chronic anxiety. There's also degrees to everything.
Right.
And so this is another thing where everybody is a narcissist.
Oh my
But
gosh.
number one is to a degree.
We
right?
all have narcissistic
Yes.
traits. The narcissism thing, what gets me about narcissism is we've made it about us. If I say that 19 Keys, I think he's a narcissist, right? I make you a narcissist based off of how I feel in terms of how you treated me. It's not about me. It's you have unhealthy relationships with everybody. Like, that's the mental illness piece of it. Because you and I fell out and you didn't like something that I said, and now I'm a narcissist. That's life. Like, that's bound to happen. But when you talk about narcissistic personality disorder, they don't have healthy relationships with anybody. So when I talk to a woman, I'm like, the relationship didn't work out. It just didn't work. He didn't want you. It just didn't work. Like,
Right.
that doesn't mean that he's a narcissist because he was selfish. He didn't ask you what you had for dinner last night. How was your day at work? Like,
Right,
that's
right.
human.
And
Like,
then you start constantly diagnosing these things every time.
everything. Like, I tell people, if you just open the book, we
Yeah.
all have access to it. Open the DSM, and it will tell you exactly what you need to know, even down from depression. Depression is, you have, because it's just a framework, right? And that's always so. The DSM is just a framework. If you
What's the
open up,
DSM?
the DSM is the diagnostic manual that we use to diagnose a mental illness. But you take depression, for example, right? It's not that, okay, my mom died, right? And now we're going to say that Raquel is depressed. Not necessarily, because so let's say there's 5 symptoms. The DSM will say, have you been experiencing at least 3 out of these 5 symptoms over this amount of time period? And for whatever reason, we scratch that. It's like, you've been having a bad day, which is how we start having these conversations about your high functioning depressed person. There's no such thing. If somebody's putting a label and saying that you're high functioning,
Right.
we got a problem, which is why we see people, go and jump off a bridge, for example, and we're like, or a building, right? And it's like, what happened? Well, you labeled them as high functioning because you didn't actually go and open up the book to see that they've been struggling with their self-worth for the last 6 months. They've had loss of appetite, and they've isolated themselves. And they've been doing that for the last 6 months. But because you have paid attention to the external circumstances, you missed the opportunity to diagnose. And I think that is so important, because going back to what we were talking about before, Dr. Joseph White, his quote, information isn't always knowledge, and knowledge isn't always wisdom. Like, to me, the mental health industry lacks a great deal of wisdom. And to be in charge of mental health, we need wisdom, because people are counting on you. I know that now that video has done what it's done, what I'm hearing a lot of therapists say is, you're saying what we were thinking. Like, if you're not doing anything about it, you're part of the problem to me. And maybe some people don't see it the way that I see it. And I don't want to come across as like, I'm the smart person and I'm trying to be a disruptor, but
it needs disruption because the industry is not working.
it is not.
Right. And I think that's the whole thing. It's like, I had FK on here, and a lot of people don't like him, but I'm like, the medical industry doesn't work. It needs a disruption. Regardless if you fall on the side of Republican or Democrat, you should want somebody to go up there and shake things up, right? So that when things get shaken up and things get exposed, that gives opportunity for growth.
Exactly.
Right? But if you're trying to keep things the same,
Yep.
then you want things to keep trending the way that they are.
Yep.
Right? And more young people, right, and older people are consistently getting diagnosed with more and more mental health issues. There's more people going to therapy than ever. But it's still not working.
Staying in therapy
Staying
forever.
in, like, lifelong.
Like lifelong.
Listen, I went to a therapist once before, and I feel like she was too stressed out to deal with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt her stress from the phone call. I'm like, no, I can't deal with this. I feel I need to help you. You okay? You know what I'm saying? So you can't stress me out about now. I'm empathetic. I'm feeling you. Like, I'm coming from my problems. You feel me? And I think there's a lot of therapists out here who need therapy, but not this. So there's talk therapy. There's all different kinds, right? And I think it's more so the idea that we take so much of this Western way of doing things, and we completely ignore the Eastern way. We don't even ask what their stats are, if they're better, right? We just take this Western perspective completely, and then we diagnose ourselves from a Western perspective. And I believe this is partly the issue with the industry as a whole, is that it has to be more holistic.
Yeah.
Right? Because some people need to be diagnosed with going out with sun therapy, right? And taking walks in nature every single day and see if that brings down your anxiety and grounding and all of these other holistic things besides going in a video call and talking to somebody every day about your problems. Right? Because even that becomes just another form of them being able to talk about themselves, which they already do on social media.
All the time.
You know, so maybe it's not talking about yourself that is the helpful thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's going and expressing yourself in different ways and allowing that energy to get off you. Person anxiety, they looping the same thought over and over and over and over. You seen that spider? Now you're thinking about that spider all day. So that same feeling is traveling through that nervous system, the way you felt when you first experienced that spider. So it's like, all right, now you need a counteractive experience.
I'm glad that you just said something about the nervous system because, again, I don't think we understand that either. Um, your nervous system does not control, it communicates.
Mm.
And I always, that's like me walking in here and I say, 19 keys, my nervous system told me that the vibes ain't right. Your nervous system cannot detect good vibes. Your nervous system does not know the difference between if a bear was here or I'm sitting with 19 keys, right? Your nervous system communicates up here and it says, am I safe? Is this a threat? And then it settles itself based off of how you react and respond to the world. I think about it as a thermostat, right? Most people want the nervous system to be on 73, but if we go back to the concept of capacity, you don't want to be at 73 all the time because that means that we're no longer positioning ourselves for growth. So this concept of your nervous system is, it remembers, I think about it from pregnancy standpoint, right? I didn't like hot fries at once. I get pregnant. My nervous system didn't remember that I didn't like hot fries. Like, it's like something's changed. You want hot fries, and now you need to respond to it. And I think that that's important because this illusion of safe spaces and environments, it creates a lot of avoidance, right? People are no longer comfortable with discomfort because they really think that their nervous system is like, 19 keys is unsafe right now. Like, I need to walk away for whatever reason, when they didn't think about, I don't have a good relationship with self. I've spent most of my time creating boundaries, so I don't even know what it's like to communicate with anybody anymore because I'm so afraid of discomfort or conflict. So that, to me, that's another misconception that we have within the mental health industry space, that your nervous system, like, you have to learn to regulate over and over because life is always introducing something different to you. So your nervous system can't scan for good vibe. I mean, it's always scanning for threats. That's the truth. It's always scanning for threats, but only from a communication standpoint. And the more that you grow and open yourself up to life, the more regulated you can become.
Yeah, I think it's about the consistent resetting of it more
Exactly.
so, right? So it's like the thermostat example. You don't want it to stay at 75. You want it to adjust to whatever temperature we at,
Exactly.
right? And that comes sometimes for everybody is different, right? But it also goes into confidence with self.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm confident in self, right, I'm not going to be scared everywhere because I believe I can handle myself.
Your
Right?
recovery time decreases.
Exactly. So now, yeah, I just seen a bear, right? But then I got to remind myself the bear is no longer here.
Yeah.
And I'm okay, right? I'm in a different set of circumstances than I was before. So I'm not going to consistently live that one out every single day,
Exactly.
right? So now I realize that bear was in the woods. I have to remind myself I am now in a protected home.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that before a bear can even get here, I would hear it coming through. And then if it did come, I'm going to figure out a way to get away or kill it.
That's right.
Right?
Explain it to the people.
Exactly. But then that's also like if you can explain it to yourself in those circumstances, okay, well, danger is a lack of thinking a lot of times, like when you have that fear. But when you're thinking through something, that's when you start strategizing through it. And then when you can bring it from a feeling to something that's logical, then it's practical. Then it's like, okay, this is not fearful. It's
And then
just,
it becomes being.
yeah.
It becomes who you are.
When you're thinking, you're not being fearful.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So now you're thinking through the problem. That makes you be present, right? Before I go speak on stages, and I tell people that a lot of people, that's the biggest anxiety they get, right? Is public speaking, right? Or get caught off guard and having to speak. One of the ways you do is you like start counting backwards or do the alphabets backwards in your head. The reason is because it forces your brain to think and become present. So with any other outside thoughts that you are having, they can't enter at this moment because your brain is not good at multitasking, right? So what we do is we give ourselves too much time to think about what we're afraid of, right? Instead of being present of where we actually are.
Right.
Right? So this idea of a safe space can be generated, right, by thinking through things, right, and not getting stuck on the same thought. Because I look at life as it's always teaching us something.
Always.
If you're poor, you're getting a master class in poverty, right?
Adversity.
Yeah. If you're unfit, you're getting a master class of what it's like to be unhealthy, right? You know, if you think you have depression, you're learning it. So somebody was telling me, they say, you saying that ADHD, I was talking to them about mental toughness the other day. I was on TikTok. They didn't like it. You feel me? So I was like, you try to, basically say I was triggering them because they got ADHD. I said, well, no,
Gaslighting them.
I think you're just lazy. I don't think it is. And the reason I said that I don't think it's ADHD because you don't even know what ADHD is. You saying you have this thing that you've never studied.
Yeah.
And my chief belief is that anytime something is wrong with you, you should study it.
Yeah.
Right? And you should learn it. And that awareness actually gives you the power over it. The ignorance allows it to control you.
Right.
So you can't be telling me you are somebody that have lifelong depression and anxiety and stress and ADHD, yet you haven't studied it and you don't know it. I would want to master that. And a lot of those things can be used as tools and superpowers.
Yep.
They don't all have to be looked at something happening to you. It can be a different spectrum in which you go about using it in life. Because this person
How do
don't
you
have
learn
that.
to live with it if
Exactly.
this is true?
And that's where anxiety can become a superpower as well. It puts you into action to do things.
It should.
It all depends on how you look at everything. So, you know, as far as this whole mental illness thing, I think that, or mental health thing, I think it is toxic in society, right? The way we self-evaluate and the way we turn that into an identity and we push that onto everybody else when we meet them.
Right. Because I have ADHD, I want you to compromise in the way that you deal with me now when that's not my issue. That's your
that's on
issue.
you. So what about this idea of, you know, this idea of triggering, right, is soft as well because it's your responsibility to heal yourself from what triggers you, not my responsibility to walk around what triggers you. Peace, family. To find out where we're going to be at in the world, because we're always traveling, you can always go to 19keys.com/tour. Now, for those who actually want to collaborate with us, because I get a lot of DMs, right? I get a lot of people that's always sending me messages, right, about different opportunities, and we would love to work with you. The proper way to go through it is to go to 19keys at 19keys.com, send us an email, send us a message, and Amechi will get back to you, and we can collaborate on an event or whatever idea that makes alignment and makes sense. If you're looking to be a sponsor for one of these to get your name out, your product out, right, and get advertisement on our page, right, as we move around, again, go to 19keys at 19keys.com. We're always looking to work with more and more people. If you have spaces, right, around the world, or you have a business that you want to see gain more exposure, again, hit us at 19keys at 19keys.com. We're working on doing something very special, right? We're about to go on what we call the coffee tour. So what we want to do is we want to work with local coffee shops. We want to pull up there, have our coffee there. People are able to buy it, right? We're giving them a word, meeting and greeting the people, which also allows us to be able to give exposure to your coffee shop in that local area that people may or may not know exists yet. And I want this to be a fun experience for all the people around. Our coffee is mushroom coffee, so it's mainly on the basis of lion's mane, right, and cordyceps. It's called Supermind for that particular region. It's good for improving focus, alertness, cognition, just boosting overall natural energy. So I look forward to pulling up to your coffee shop and having more people know that you're there and then working with you directly as well. Again, if you want to be a distributor of our coffee, go on our page as we tell people about the locations that they can find them locally. Go to 19keys at 19keys.com and we will respond to you promptly. So family, I appreciate you as always for watching High Level Conversations, and I look forward to having a cup of coffee with you. Peace. Raquel, the capacity expert, has what she calls the 4 dimensions of capacity, and I want to go over those 4 dimensions. Number 1 is emotional intelligence. Most people don't have the emotional resilience to deal with everything that's going at them today, day by day.
And it requires a level of self-awareness to start understanding your own patterns and your own habits that's in your life. One of the best ways to do this is by journaling. Every single day, journal your thoughts, what you expect from the day, right? And at the end of the day, journal your thoughts of what actually happened throughout that day, right? This wires you to start having more awareness of your own emotions throughout the day and understanding your habits and your reaction. It forces you to have introspection, to start reflecting on your own thoughts and ideas. So therefore, you're not just running in the wild, right? You put some order into your own thoughts. Once you start to rationalize and practicalize with your own emotions, you start to have a deeper understanding of them. So everybody should have a journal if you want to increase your intelligence, which ultimately increases your capacity.
I would say let's break it down from, because I'm always thinking about the people that are truly suffering. Triggering versus you're bothered, right? When you're triggered, it's a visceral reaction. Like, I mean, your heart is pumping. You take the LA fires, for example. If you turn the stove on right now and I smell fire, I'm like triggered because this reminds me of something or this reminds me of abuse. That's a trigger. Most of us are walking around life today, we're bothered. And that's normal. That's life. I don't have to be concerned about you being bothered. I mean, I don't have to be concerned about someone being triggered either, but I can understand if you are triggered because now I have the language that says that a trigger is really based off of someone experiencing trauma or PTSD, because I think that that's some of the issue. People have all of this language now and it has no meaning anymore, which means that we don't respect it anymore, because even me, like I find myself sometimes like, you're triggered, like I didn't say anything to you. But that's because I'm coming from my lens, like, is your heart racing? Like, are you get ready to have a panic attack? I mean, or are you bothered? Are you annoyed? Because those are normal emotions. Those are normal reactions to life. So I just, to me, when if we were talking about destigmatizing mental health, like I almost feel like the language that we put out into society, like it shouldn't. I feel like it should have been something that the industry held on to. And if I'm talking to you and I recognize that you're triggered, right? That we're really dealing with triggers. I'm downloading all of that information. I'm working within that information to figure out how to support you. And I'm going to communicate it to you in a way to where it doesn't become an identity. And that way you can learn to live with it, because you do need to know what's going on with you. I don't know what we do today. Like, it's like, you're depressed. Let me tell you what your diagnosis is. And you had trauma. That's another one too. It drives me nuts. Like, it bothers me. It doesn't trigger me. It bothers me. Trauma. I remember when I first went and saw a therapist, I actually hated it. It was nice to talk, but by the time I had went, I didn't have the language then, but I realized that I was experiencing post-traumatic growth disorder. So I lost my mom at 11 to an overdose. And I held on to it for 20-something years, like even when I had my own children. And by the time I had went to therapy, the judgment that I had of her had dissipated, because I was like, what makes me any better than her? Like, you have the ability to cause people pain too. Like, you don't understand what adulting is like. So by the time I went to therapy, I'm talking to the therapist, typical, tell me about your life. I'm like, well, I lost, because I thought that that's what therapy was. Oh, I lost my mom to an overdose, drugs. And she was like, that must have been horrible. Well, and I'm like, yeah, it was. But today, like, I have this deep sense of gratitude for her and what she, and then I'm like, waiting for her to do something beyond that, instead of just like talk therapy, because talk therapy is psychotherapy. It's psychodynamics, where they're trying to tap into your unconscious mind to figure out why do you behave the way that you do. And I wasn't giving her anything, so it was difficult. And then I learned about post-traumatic growth disorder, and I'm like, I've transformed. Trauma, like Play-Doh, right? Like, you can take Play-Doh, this is a trauma, and then you can start sculpting it and, doing different things with it. And we don't talk about post-traumatic growth disorder. And when I think of trauma, I always say trauma is, you have objective trauma and you have subjective trauma. Objective trauma, and I'll continue to use the most recent event, is LA fires, right? You could not have expected that to happen, right? Like, people didn't think that when they woke up tomorrow that they wouldn't have homes anymore. You're caught off guard. Your sense of safety has been robbed. You're helpless. You're hopeless. Subjective trauma is, you and I grew up in the same household. Mom used to yell at both of us. You were like, Mom is crazy. She be tripping. Mom has really messed up my childhood. That's subjective trauma because it's based off of your perceptions and how you've internalized something.
The story you tell yourself.
And the story that you tell yourself. So this concept of you can't heal from trauma, like, it's absurd to me, because if trauma is subjective and we still have this idea of post-traumatic growth disorder, you don't tell people that they can't heal from trauma. Like, that's no hope. And it goes back to what you were saying about identity, right? Now I've added another label to me. I walk around with trauma for the rest of my life as if I can't grow from it. And then struggle becomes a part of your identity. And I think that that's really important for us, right? Because we're already fighting so many other narratives. We don't need any more labels. Like, don't give me another label.
And I think that's kind of a psyop that has been specifically for our people, is to constantly see ourselves as victims. Because psychologically, if you want to be a winner, you have to think that you are a winner, right? Nobody goes into a boxing match thinking that they're going to lose and end up winning. You can't accidentally win, right? They consider that to be luck. That's gambling.
Yeah.
But in real life, winners believe that they're winners. They believe they come from winning, or they have the post-traumatic growth. They have a chip on their shoulder saying, because I went through this is easy for me.
Yep.
Right? So there's two ways you can internalize it, but most people internalize it from the traumatic standpoint that I come from nothing, so woe is me. I have all these things that I must get over. And it's like when I teach history, it's like history is taught in a way that only victimizes us, right? It's a case in point. If you learned about the Underground Railroad, right? Harriet Tubman, but in that story, there's so much missing out. They don't talk about the guerrilla warfare. They don't talk about the battles that happened, right? The amount of fights that happened. You hear about who Harriet Tubman might have left behind. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, that was actually the largest guerrilla military warfare campaign that happened at that time.
Yeah.
So that means that they were soldiers and warriors, right? And then if you study history, you would hear a consistent history of battles all the way up from when we first came over here on these shores. There was a battle where they slaughtered the slave masters at the time, right? For all the way from 19 or something like that. But when you hear history now, it's just, you was in chains, you was getting beat. Every time you tried to build, destroyed, it's like, damn, was anything good happening?
Was anything good?
No,
and then we internalize the struggle,
Exactly.
not realizing that the work has already been done and life has given us a different opportunity, and your struggle is no longer that struggle. And you can't, that's why I say you can't get caught up in this mental health stuff, because that sense of resiliency that we say that came from a bloodline, like, for a lot of talk that's happening, at least within the mental health space, we're losing it. Like, we're losing it.
Yeah.
Our children are
I
losing
believe
it.
I think they're destroying it, because you're destroying that resilience by overdiagnosing it as a problem instead of as a gift.
Yep.
Right? So
You struggle,
yeah.
like, you struggle, and the reason why you can't experience joy because it's trauma. No, you're struggling because you're choosing to stay attached to a story that's no longer yours. Like, it has nothing to do with trauma anymore, but that's what you're choosing to look at. And I'm so passionate. I'm so passionate about this. I mean, I really am, because personal responsibility and accountability, I just don't think that you win at life in your mind first. And when you really understand, like, who you are, everything around you just becomes noise. That's it. Like, you become unbothered. Like, I did a post the other day about peace, and people are asking me, like, how do you achieve peace? And I really sat back. I was like, I don't know how to tell people how to achieve peace, because peace is something that you embody. It's not something that is based off of what you're doing. Like, if I have peace, I'm going to bring peace regardless. Like, my peace is not going to change because 19 Keys is ready to start a war. Like, if I say I'm peace, like, if this is what it looks like, peace is something that you embody. And a lot of people don't have peace today. And I'll go back to say, for example, boundaries, right? I'm not a fan of boundaries. I understand. I'm not. I think that boundaries have become a substitution for self-trust. It's a temporary solution to help you cope, okay? And we continue to say that boundaries are, that they're not for you, they're for me. Well, why did you establish the boundary then? If the boundary was for you, why did you create it in the first place? And then you have people say, well, they're stuck. Like, so who is the boundary for? If I'm creating a boundary, am I creating it for you? Because 19 Keys, he continues to disrespect me, so I need a boundary. You don't create boundaries from yourself. Like, when you trust yourself, you move through life a certain way. Who you are communicates to other people. Now, that's not to say that you will not be tested, because life wants to test if you actually trust yourself. Like, that's not going to change. You pass that test, life will present another test to you. You pass that test, life will present another test for you. And I think that all of these coping mechanisms that we're introducing to people, that foundation of self-trust and truly understanding where you are, it is eroding. And people don't have a strong sense of self, even down to the standpoint of, when I think about like how I've created my content, like I've transitioned, like I put therapists on everything. You know why? Because people respect experts. Who says that I'm right? Like, you take my information in because you saw the therapy title. Not once did you think about considering, is it true? Does it resonate with me? And I think that that is an issue. And that's why I put out the content the way that I do, because I want people to challenge it. I want people to say, she's crazy. I want people to say that this doesn't sound right, or you have me thinking now, because your ability to think for yourself will always get you closer to yourself. If I am making my decisions and judgments based off of what 19 Keys presents out, and I always say, chew on that before you swallow that shit. Like, chew on it first. You don't have to swallow it. Chew on it. Think about it before you digest anything. Like, therapists, we always say you're the expert in your life. If that is true, I'm not going to accept the first thing that you tell me. I'm going to push back. I'm going to challenge it. Give me a minute to think about it. And people have gotten so wrapped up in it because mental health.
Well, I don't think most people have time to think. Most of it's like a certain diet, right? If you know that you're eating too much junk food and you don't feel good, you know it's because of the junk food, right? You know that there's something you need to change about life.
Right.
When people are consuming too much junk content, they don't think of it like that, right? And so a lot of what people issues are is like they look at problems on the news, so that becomes the way that they view life, right? It becomes skewed, right? They are consistently intaking junk content, gossip content, relationship blogs, right? Entertainment news. Most things are low level. So low level content doesn't require you to think. You're just absorbing and reacting, and you getting a quick dopamine hit. Well, that felt good. Let me find something else, something else, something else. So there's not a good information diet that people have today. And a good diet is going to activate that parts of the brain that focuses you to think. Like, damn, that got me thinking. Let me reflect. So when you come across something that does require you to actually think and reflect, you're absorbing it the same way you would absorb a joke, right? Or some gossip content or watching a red balloon show. You just take it wholly in because, again, everything has to be trained. The mind is a muscle. The brain is a muscle.
Right.
If you're not actually working those things out, then they're very weak. And most people, parts of their brain is very weak. Their ability to think is very, very weak. So they are forced to take in everything just by the fact that their brain is and their mind is going through atrophy.
I never thought about it like that. I just thought it was normal. No, I'm just
No. But nowadays, because attention, the asset of it, everybody is wanting your attention, right?
Yeah.
And the marketers are getting better and better. The social media person wants it, right? The snack company wants it, right? The government wants it, the media. And everybody is getting really good at getting your attention, but it requires low-level things that just make you have immediate stimuli response.
Yeah.
So now you cut through because here's this thing that I believed about boundaries, right? And you just challenged it. Now you triggered, right? But what
Right.
it really triggered was me to think because
Yeah.
I really wanted to just go with the flow and ideas that I already have. It's
Right.
like religion. People battle over religion because you triggered a belief system. And at the belief, that's at the core of things that they don't want to change or even think about.
Yeah.
Right? These are just things that make me who I am. Right? So the idea of 19 Keys existing, he a black Muslim. I ain't supposed to listen to black Muslims. Right? So why would I listen to him? But wait a minute, this is kind of truthful. So for me, I think it requires people a lot of times to accept something and then think about it.
Yeah.
Right? So they have to sit there and be like, wait a minute, I wasn't even expecting to like what was just said or listen at all. Because beyond wisdom is understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't have no understanding, right? We take in all this information, but we don't know what it really means.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you ask somebody to explain it, they couldn't, which then angers them. And then that's when we lash out at each other, right? So now I'm getting mad because you know damn well I can't explain this. I'm just using these words. So now you're mad at me. So now it creates conflict, right? And social media is driven based on engagement and conflict,
Yep.
right? So you just made somebody pissed off when you just said the thing about boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, should be more so, what do you really think about the idea of it? Can you even use a different word? So when you say post-traumatic growth, there's another side of that, right? That is the healing side or the opposite of what you believe. And then most people don't have that time to say, okay, what's the opposite of stress, right? What is the opposite of not needing boundaries? When is that point where I get over these things? And I think there needs to be more language held in that space when you've grown past these things.
Yeah.
There has to be evolution, not surviving mental health. And I think that's what the industry is. How do we survive and just cope with this? Versus, and this is where the medical industry, period, doesn't deal with it, healing and cures. The word cure has just decreased all the way, right? This idea of curing something to where it's no longer in you and you've evolved past it.
Yep.
And if we have this ability of nocebo and placebo to believe things, right, and heal ourselves from taking a sugar pill, then it's the same thing about what we tell ourselves. We can internalize it. That can become a biological mechanism and we get past it,
Yeah.
right? So if we were taught when we were younger that stress only lasts 30 days, everybody would internalize and believe that. And when it gets to that 30-day threshold, they're like, oh, well, I'm
Life
over
is
it
good.
now.
Right. Right.
But if you tell people this is going to be a lifelong thing you have to deal with, so find coping
Well,
mechanisms
that's
for the
what I'm
rest of your
telling
life.
you. Life is going to be a lifetime
Yeah,
thing that you're going to have to deal with. Like,
yeah.
it's not going to stop. And people are offering like the coping mechanisms, but it goes back to that substance piece, right? For example, therapists are human. Like, everybody has their own walk. I talked about healing again. I don't like the word healing. I don't like it because of
I
how it's
like you. I like
being
you. I like all the stuff you don't like. I
used.
like this.
You do? Okay, good. Healing to me, if you think about it from just humans, right? It's this idea that I'll return back to this person that I was before. And I don't want to be the person that I was before because I want to integrate my experiences in a way that converts over into wisdom. If I'm trying to, somebody asked me yesterday, when do we know that we've healed? When you stop trying to heal yourself from being human, that's when. Like, you'll know that you're healed when you stop trying to heal yourself from being human. Like, no one goes through life unscathed. Like, no one, like, not even your kids that you think you're giving them this best and this perfect life, because you don't get to decide how people interpret the world. And I think that life would be a little bit more, like, less stressful if people just could take that in. Like, none of us go through life unscathed. Like,
Yeah.
nobody gets out of here not having a wound, a scar, or any of those things. Because I'm gonna tell you another one I hate, because it just came to my mind. Nobody taught me. Nobody taught me, and I'm like, what? And this, It's someone supposed to teach you everything that you should know for your life. Like, what would be the point of growing if somebody taught you and positioned you for everything that you're supposed to know? Like, life does not work that way. For me to think that I'm going to teach my kids everything that they're supposed to know, number one, I'm teaching them from my level of awareness, from how woke or enlightened I feel that I am, right? At some point, they're going to say, maybe my mom was crazy. I believed in balance, whatever it may be, right? I can't teach them everything that they're supposed to know about their life because the journey is different. I can't give you my blueprint. And if we, I guess you're making me think now because I'm having the process that people actually don't think. And it catches me off guard because I'm listening, I'm watching people on social media now because I've never been exposed to that many people in that sense, right? It's normally like a one-on-one conversation where I'm like, 19 keys, like what would make you say that? And now I'm seeing it from the masses and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe this is like people don't critically think. They don't, you're
Well,
just downloading.
that's the area of the neocortex. That's the higher level of thinking, the awareness, the critical thinking, and that area of the brain, again, goes back to the content thing. That area of the brain is not being stimulated, right? If you want to keep a people divided, right, then you don't feed them consistent high level content so that they're thinking for themselves. And they start identifying these common enemies and threats, and they become cohesive and start having these conversations with each other, right? You put intelligent people in a room, they can come to an understanding. They can come to a consensus, right? But if you divide people by all of these identities and titles and things of that nature, it's not that they can't come to an agreement, they don't want to, right? Because you're a Republican, I don't want to agree with you,
Right.
right? You're a Christian, I don't want to agree with you, right?
Somebody asked me that today. They said, I love your content. Are you a Christian? I responded, why does that matter?
Yeah.
I need to know who I'm following. You might want to unfollow me then
Yeah.
because I don't think I owe you that.
The
Like,
problem is they're not going to follow you, though.
that's what I'm saying though. Like if something resonates and it feels right for you and you feel like it's challenging you, why does it matter? Because I could tell you whatever I wanted to tell you. Yeah, I'm Christian.
Because people are looking for flaws, right? And they're looking for reasons not to listen to you at the same time. So it can justify the current beliefs that they already have, right? It's their own cognitive dissonance. Like maybe he's wrong because he's Muslim, you know what I mean? And I'm Christian and we're supposed to have various different points.
Yeah.
Right? You don't believe what I believe, so maybe I can keep my belief system and not listen to this person.
Right.
That's why we try to put people in this box of perfectionism, right? And perfectionism is built out of insecurities, never believing you good enough, or trying to make somebody else seem like you're perfect just to tear them down. So now they're not good enough, so I ain't got to listen to them.
Yeah.
So I always stay out of that box. You feel me? I'm not trying to be perfect. I don't want to be perfect. I'm always striving for evolution.
Yep.
So I think that even the thing you say about healing, I think we need to, I think school programs think that we can't evolve because Darwinism talked about evolution happening over thousands and millions of years versus personal evolution throughout life, right? We have graduation points in life. We have cycles that we go in life, right? And I think we're so disconnected from harmony and having that ability to evolve through processes. Like, it's like somebody going through jail, in and out of prison, right? The recidivism rate continues to stay skyrocketing high is because you haven't learned the lesson, right? You ain't sit down and say, okay, I do this a lot, right? I'm very introspective. I'm always thinking, why am I doing things, right? Because that why gets me to who I am, understanding my own processes, my thought patterns, my habits, right? And then understanding where that comes from. You talk about the inner child. For me, it's more so about just memories and your perspective on those memories.
Yeah.
Right? So I go through I don't do it now because I've done it so many times, but I've went through my life and changed my perspective on things that happened to me. And realizing that I don't think you need to rescue the child from what happened in the past. It's more so realizing you're not that child.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And saying that you had to go through it that way because he didn't learn what you know. So you're judging your past self based on what you now know.
Yep.
And they didn't know that, so they had to react that way. They wasn't tough. So maybe they did that thing that they did, but so you can become who
We
you
might
are.
as well just both start a whole therapy program. I'll back you. You don't have to be the therapist. I'll back you. because they might take my license anyway.
The second dimension of increasing one's capacity is critical thinking, which is the ability to think, right? A lot of people don't have critical thinking skills. They're not actually analyzing all of this new information and ideas that's coming to them. And a lot of times it feels like there's so much information, they don't have time to think critically about it whatsoever. They do a lot of surface level and shallow responding or reacting to things, right? So one of the best ways to do this is ask yourself reflective questions, right? When we sit down here and ask yourself, what is a boundary, right? Why do I feel like I need them? Where did this come from? For me, I like to get to the root and analyze things. I would always study, what does the root word of critical thinking even mean? Who is the father of critical thinking? There's often a root to that psychology in which you can follow. And by doing that, it allows you to start having more substance thinking in the way that you go about responding to the world, instead of you just constantly taking in whatever you're being fed and not having that ability to critically think. When you look at these new AI machines and they show you how they're thinking, they're taking you through a basis of patterns and steps to try to figure out a logical reasoning or a real why. So critical thinking and reflective questioning of oneself as you're analyzing new information and data that's coming to you ensures that you're putting a filter system and not just taking in what you're giving, but you have an actual analysis that forces your brain to actually be activated and think during that time, essentially making you more human and less machine-like.
No, I think people need challenges, man, and we are in an age of resilience. In this era of overstimulation of information, you have to be resilient, right? There's a whole generation that has to learn AI, younger and older generation, right? But the learning of AI is more so first learning about how to optimize self. Because if you don't know how you think, you can't tell a machine what to think and what processes it'll get for you. So for me, even that interface with like artificial intelligence, let's take the artificial off and just look at it as intelligence. And the relationship we have with this idea of our own self-intelligence, I think that's the lower part of society, right? So if you were at the ruling class of society, why would you want society to be smarter, right? Unless you had a dictatorship and you can control them, right? But if you can't, you don't want people to be smarter, which also means you don't want the more intelligent ones amongst them to ever rise. People who start challenging systems and ideas, no, they're going to disrupt too many things. So let's shadow ban them and get them out of here, because they're going to make the rest of them think. Now we have to change our processes to be more efficient. It might mess with our profitability, right? There's so many different things. Companies have a fiduciary duty not to make your life better, but to make more money. And that trickles down to doctors, right? If this company is also, there's a large percentage of scientists who, peer review papers, but a lot of these peer reviews, some of them are free, but a lot of them, they have to be funded. You know what I mean? But it's hard to erase the bias of who's funding you, right? And then what you peer review to then be accepted, which then becomes trickled down to this doctor and then this patient and what they believe. And then your belief was funded and sponsored by a company so they can make more money.
I just had that conversation the other day because, someone said, is this backed by research? Is there empirical data behind it? And, transitioning from the business world to me into science world was a challenge, because it's like, it was less black and white. It was a lot of gray in the science field. And I know that when I started looking at it, I don't remember what class it was, but I used to challenge the data that for us. And I used to say, where did the data come from? Did you get it from the area that I live in or the area that I grew up in? Because if you got it from the area that I grew up in, it's going to continue to say the same thing. Because if you have no resources, if you lack education, like you guys are already telling us in the book, the 5 types of privileges, it's male, it's white, it's socioeconomic status, no disability. If you grab data from there, it doesn't represent the 19 keys. It doesn't represent the Raquel Hopkins. And what ends up happening is we continue to take data in that does not serve the mindset that we're actually trying to challenge. So I struggled with that because I didn't feel like it was reflective. And that's what I tell people. Like, if I had a hypothesis and I said, 19 keys, I really want to get this data out here. Do you mind supporting me? We can go and make whatever we want to be true to whatever consumer. And I don't know why people have don't understand that concept that data derives from people.
Right.
I
Numbers
come up with an
can't
idea
lie.
that I want to prove, I prove it. I think you get what I'm saying.
But again, most people don't have time to think. That's a whole.
Yes, we do. Like, I just can't accept,
Well, they have time, but they're not spending that time thinking, right? Because again, people are stuck in these silos and these bubbles. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta, if you look at people's social media time, a lot of it is spent on Twitter, it's spent on YouTube, it's spent on TikTok, right? All those hours in the day, people are trying to make money, right? The American dream is being robbed from people to where they don't have any money. So the reason people on TikTok, because it became where the younger generation seen their ability to create the American dream for themselves. To get rich and famous, you can be whoever you want to be, you can make money, right? And you can live a life that you kind of want to live. So in between you having to learn new technology, you having to learn content, right? You having to also become a human being, learn how to manage your own feelings, emotions, thoughts, ideas. Most people are substituting their thinking to their favorite content creator, influencer, thought leader, entertainer, celebrity, right? They're outsourcing thinking.
Yeah, they're
Right?
outsourcing.
Then there's a paper that came on AI that shows that the more people use AI, right, the less they learn how to think, right? So now they're outsourcing it to this new form of intelligence, which is these machines.
That is
So
just so wild. I mean,
you come
I
from an area
get
of
it.
learning, though.
Even me, like, my husband, I'm like, he's like, are you arguing with AI? I'm like, yeah, because that's not what I said. Like, what I said was,
Yeah.
like, and that is what I do with AI. I argue with AI because that's not what I said.
Right.
That
And it
doesn't
could
even
give
make
you,
any sense.
I think AI is the perfect example, right? Because it can give you an answer that seems completely right, but it's going to be completely wrong.
Completely wrong.
And that's the idea of this data. It can actually give you a number, right? And say, hey, 20% of people say that they are stressed out daily, right? And it could create a whole entire scientist that never existed, institution, and you would read that and believe that and say, damn, I got the source, right? Then you go out there and you then speak that data, and then everybody else listens to it and they think that it's real.
Yep.
But it's not. But that ability to research, that's what's missing, right? You went to school. School has processes that you end up learning. You had experience in real life. Those experiences you reflected on, those emotions that you went through. So you have a real human brain, right? Most people have machine brains. You feel me? Most people are learning from the machine how to think. And we're becoming more machine-like, which is why we speak of ourselves as machines, right? How we process information.
How we
That's
go about
machine
our
language.
daily.
It's not human language, right? How we live in flow and harmony, right? And how we have more regenerative practices. Like, we think about just extraction instead of how do we live in harmony with reality.
Yeah.
So I think the higher form right now is what people need, because we got such into modernization. You need more ancestral and indigenous practices. They understood the mind and the spirit way beyond anything Freud could ever come up with, right? And they were able to deal with harsh terrains in societies. Now, if you put them in today, of course, they'd be overstimulated by the complexities of the world.
Yep.
And even science and psychology is outdated because the world is so complex now that those scientists and those psychologists didn't live in this world to even diagnose a fraction of the new identities that exist and the new ways that people live at all.
So there's this guy, his name is Robert Keegan, and he focuses on adult development. He projected it, like, I don't remember the year, but he said most people will not be able to meet the modern day demands. And it goes back to exactly what we're talking about, right? The inability to think. Currently, 70% of the population, like you see, I choose the research that I want to choose. 70% of the population lives with a socialized mind. So, what that means is, let's just say that you and I connect on consciousness, right? If someone was to come to me and say, well, Raquel, 19 Keys, he is Muslim, but we have the consciousness thing in common. What he says is, what Raquel would do is she's going to feel internal conflict here because now you're challenging an inner value of hers because she didn't know that she could associate with a Muslim and she doesn't know what to do. But you know what happens? Raquel does nothing. She stays in the community. She stays in the pack because her mind does not have the ability to go to what he refers to as a more self-authoring mind, which then says, I don't have to feel internal conflict because we don't see eye to eye from a religion standpoint. We can connect from a conscious standpoint. In fact, I can learn something from him from the Muslim. Most people can't make that shift. Even when you think about like the therapy community, right? The therapy community is within that population. Say anything against mental health therapists or anything, it's hard to come out of that because they've helped me. Now, if I say that, for example, this new no contact thing that's going on, your mom died yesterday. You still doing that no contact thing that your therapist taught you? Internal conflict. What are you going to choose? Are you going to choose to stay within the community or are you going to choose to go to the funeral and talk to your other family because you've isolated yourself from the very thing that matters to you? So I really like his model because it gives a framework, at least like a basis for you to be able to think. Now, what I would challenge his framework on is the first two stages, he says that children show up in this form of mind. I say no. The first one is an impulsive mind. And I've recreated because you want it to match the language of today. And I call it the survival mind. And it's instant gratification. Like you don't have the ability to control yourself. And the second one is it's more of this transactional state. And he refers to it as the imperial mind. And it says that the way that I move through life is based off of rewards and consequences. I know I have no values, I have no sense of self. I don't stop at the red light because I think about killing someone. I stop at the red light because the camera is there, and if they catch my license tag, I might get a ticket. So what you do has nothing to do with who you are. And I think that that's important, right? Because if you understand human development from that, we were talking about fulfillment, right? Fulfillment falls in that category for me. I do it based off of rewards and consequences. If chasing success means that I can provide for my family, it changes our lifestyle, it makes sense. And then eventually maybe you go into a more socialized mindset, which is, all right, everybody's saying that grind culture is over. We're no longer participating. And now everybody broke. But you're like, we need money. So then you're either going to stay here or you go back to the previous mindset or you go beyond. And so it's impulsive, imperial, socialized, self-authoring, and self-transforming. Only 1% of the population will ever see the self-transforming mind. Now we all think, I would tell you I was 1%, but he would tell you we all think that we're much more evolved than what we are.
I think it's probably less than that.
I would agree too. What I really like about the self-transforming mindset, because what comes to my mind is when people say two things can be true. I'm like, duh. Like my 2-year-old knows that, right? Mommy, I hate you. Mommy, I love you. Like binary thinking. I don't think that when people say, because you hear it all the time, well, people are like two things can be true. And I'm like, that's all you got? Like, what about transitioning to being able to hold multiple perspectives? We don't have the ability to hold multiple perspectives. We can say two things can be true, but if I give you 4 or 5 things that could be true, done.
But see which I mean, it's infinite things can be true. That's the reality. It's just all decisions,
Yep.
right? Scientists have shown recently that we live in a multiverse. And all that to me is just saying that through every decision that could possibly be made is a truth.
Yeah.
Could have went left, you could have went right, you could have done nothing, right? You could have never showed up in the first place. You could have read red clothes today or black clothes. Or blue. There's all this infinite amount of alternative possibilities. What I get people to often think about is think about the version of you in whatever dimension and universe that is the most successful you could possibly be, right? At the highest height of actualization for yourself that you can possibly obtain from wealth, success, family, influence, right? Just this is the peak you, right? I think that the more you sit down, the more you sit with that idea of thinking about that person, right? The more you start integrating into that person. But then it goes into the details. Okay, what is the extreme differences in their habits, in the way they think, and mine,
Yeah.
right? Because the way I think is the only thing that limits me from having access to that universe, right? And I also look at it like the fact that you can have a day that's really good, right? Where everything just seems to flow right. I mean, you feel immaculate. Your joy levels is just high. Like it's like you walking down the street just saying what's up to everybody. You just feel good. I look at that as almost like you had access to a dimension of a version of you that lives like that forever.
Yeah.
But you only got access to that version for a day because there's something that requires to stay in that universe, right?
Mhm.
And stay in that dimension, that higher self. And you're not living according to that. So your life becomes bipolar, right? So it goes based on your emotions.
High highs and low lows.
Yes. And most people don't have the stoicness to remain the same through wins and losses, right? And I believe that that is the chief thing that successful people have in common,
They do. Not
right?
afraid to lose.
So no matter what's going on, I need delayed gratification so I can get to the next thing that's going on. I'm not about to over celebrate as if I've gotten somewhere because this is not the thing. The process itself, the growth itself, the evolution, the challenge itself is the success.
I love that you say that because I'm in that moment right now. So I guess it was Monday that I went viral. My friend, everybody's excited, right? Because they know what she's done, and I'm not proud of myself, right? But I'm also not surprised that I've done it.
That's key.
So you don't want to come across as like cocky in a sense, but I was explaining that what I do doesn't change because I went viral. That is, I'm proud of it because it reflects the consistency, right? It reflects that for the last, almost 2 years, I've posted with the only people liking my stuff is my sister, my niece, my husband, 3 people, sometimes just me. Sometimes I've even hearted. I'm like, oh, that's a good one there.
If you don't like it, watch it somebody else.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's a good one. I'm double tap
You
that
sit
one.
there listening back to yourself. Well, that boy good.
That was good. And I had that moment. Initially, I was going through the phone. I literally could not think because the dopamine, right? And I was like, I don't like this feeling. I don't like this feeling because it takes away from what I believe is my craft, my ability to think, to put out content and not be attached to how it performs, right? And I think that's why so many people find themselves disappointed because we expect life to reward our efforts. Like, I don't expect life to do anything for me at this point. And because of that, that's why I believe that I'm sitting down with 19 keys, right? That's a reflection of it's spiritual, right? Like it's not me. It's not me. Like life doesn't owe me anything. Like it's great to have the people and the following, but I have to stay grounded in who I am. And that's what's most important to me. I know what it's like to have success. I know what it's like to feel unfulfilled, to feel empty. So I don't celebrate the same things anymore. I celebrate, my husband, like supporting, me being all over the place. I done had 9 different careers at this point, right? Like those are the things that matter to me, the things that I don't place on the internet, the things that you cannot see. So no, I didn't celebrate this. Not because I'm not proud. I'm proud of my consistency.
That is a way to make quantum leaps of success. Because most people, they think about success and traction in life is like this step-by-step process, right? I'm gonna get here, I'm gonna get to there. Why not from here to here, right? But we're not trained to think like that. And I think when you have this reality of, damn, should I put this, or most of the time as a creative, you have nothing to lose. So you put this out there with everything to gain, right? And you're not overthinking it. Then success makes you start thinking about things more. Damn, I got these people, now they watching me. Should I put this out? Am I gonna satisfy them? And then that makes you start tailoring, which what you're really doing is you're stifling your growth, right? So every time that I didn't want to put something out there, right, is when I had the best performing content or whatever, in moments. And I trained myself to understand what that feeling was, right? This is those moments of growth, right? I'm doing something different. I'm behaving different. It's a different pattern, a different thought, which means I'm going to get different results than what I normally get. So if I live in this comfort and in what most people create as boundaries, then I can't make a leap because I'm controlling my own growth by being too careful and safe, right? And then I've learned to not be surprised by success because I learned that the universe responds to frequency, not goals.
It does.
So that if I'm surprised, then it's surprise too. Well, I ain't gonna keep surprising your ass. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you wasn't expecting that to happen? Well, shoot, no. I expect it all to happen. I every single day, if I wake up and I say I'm expecting something amazing to happen, number one, I stop trying so hard, right? And you realize trying is a force, right? And the more force you apply on something, the more force is applied back. So for me now, I'm just letting things flow. It's go happen. Life.
That's a good feeling.
It's hard to let go of that trying, right? Because life should be easy, but not easy in the sense that nothing is going to happen. But it's life. It's easy to understand that things are going to happen, right? But what happens, I don't even need to have control over. I just need to be in flow.
The third dimension of increasing one's capacity is relationship building, right? Fostering deeper and better connections with yourself and the people around you in all social settings. One of the best ways to do this is to be interested. What do I mean by that? When you're speaking with somebody, give them all of your attention and all of your focus. Actually be curious. Listen. Practice active listening, not to respond, but to actually hear. In order to become a better communicator, you must become a better listener. Most of the time, people are not listening enough in order for them to reply in a meaningful manner. So therefore, it makes the person understand that you're breaking connection in this moment and you just want to be heard instead of listen. In order to become a better communicator, the simplest thing in the world is to be interested, which increases you becoming interesting. So be interested in what a person has to say. Then seek ways to give value. Most of the time, people want to be listened to. So if you're that listener, then people want to call you. Then that becomes a value, and then people want to reciprocate. Focus on deep, meaningful social connections so you don't look for them in false ways. And social media has all these ways to create faux connections nowadays.
Ain't even no coffee in here. I ain't gonna lie, this coffee's so good. I done drunk it all while I was having my high-level conversation. Now, what I like to do in my coffee, I put a little cinnamon in there. You know what I mean? Sometimes, you know what I mean, a little shot of nutmeg and some little brown sugar. Now, the coffee that is my preferred, of course, is that Supermind because I need to be stimulated while having these high-level conversations. Now, what I actually want to do is actually pull up to your local coffee shop. Now, I'm talking to you, coffee shop owner, right? The person that's been in business maybe 1, 2 years, maybe forever. I want to pull up and have a cup of Supermind coffee with you. And I would love for you to be a distributor of our coffee. We go do something different, man. We're going to call this one a coffee tour, right? Because it's just about coming up to these local environments and communities and coffee shops. Not only are we going to give you exposure as well, but we would love for you to hold our coffee so that we can show people where you are at, right? And we want to work with all existing communities. I think coffee is one of those things that bring people together, right? We want to have energy when we drink coffee, right? We want to be fully awake and aware. And during a time, man, when it's hard to focus, a good cup of coffee is the best thing in the world. But we focus on mushroom coffee. I'm not sure if y'all do that where y'all at, right? But ours have the lion's mane and it got the cordyceps. So I'll be on them shrooms, but not them kind of shrooms that get you all the way out of there. You feel me? Them kind of shrooms that actually get you in here. More focus on your work and your day-to-day jobs that you have. Now our coffee is instant. We just pour it in there, some hot water, and it's ready to go. So I want to pull up, man, instead of just autographing, books, I'm gonna autograph the bags. You know, feel me? It's gonna be a superstar coffee tour. We're going to do something different that ain't never been done before. So we want to get a list of maybe like 50 coffee shops, go all across the world, not even just America. You feel me? I want to be all the way in Turkey, you feel me, with the Supermind coffee. Wherever you at and you love coffee and you got people and you want exposure, I want to come meet you, have a cup of coffee, sit down, and maybe even have a high-level conversation, depending on how the coffee hitting that day. But anyway, go to 19 Keys at 19keys.com so I can pull up to the local coffee shop and have a high-level conversation with you. Peace, family. I was on the show Sway in the Morning, and I gave one of the top 5 freestyles in history, right? Now, before I did this, I'm sitting in a chair. I just did a long interview. Had nothing to do with, like, rapping or nothing, right? And he just turned on the music. And I'm confronted with this moment, right? I can take this moment as something difficult about to happen. I got to overthink. How am I going to perform? All of that thinking stops me from actually being in flow. And so instead, when I'm faced with difficulty, I relax, right? Because it's when skills meets challenge. In between that is when you're in flow.
And there's no judgment.
None. And judgment takes away from the ability to be in flow because you're using excess energy that you should be using in the moment, right?
Yep.
For that meeting that moment. And I think most people are not doing something in life that's difficult enough for them to be in flow and have success, right? So they're overqualified for these small things that they're attempting to do. And you're not thinking big enough, so therefore your life is not expanding more. So for me, I want to be confronted with tasks. I want to be confronted with difficulty so that I'm at this moment where I have to use my faculties. Because most of the time I don't have to think because life is too easy.
You were a difficulty for me
Mm.
because I didn't know who 19 Keys was before. I mean, the girls were calling. I'm telling you, they were calling. Girls, having said that, I had, like, this just happened, right? You can say, well, this is a sign, right? Like, universe, God is sending a sign. Or, well, you had prior commitments. Do you trust that if 19 Keys team says that if Saturday doesn't work, we'll try something else? Right. Or are you comfortable saying, this is my schedule, or are you going to drop everything completely? Because those are values over there. Or because you just got this viral moment. I had to sit back and think, honestly, because I was like, well, the people said that you want to talk, but I was like, he may be a great guy, and it may be even a good opportunity for me, but I need to take a minute to think first. And that's what people usually do. They say, oh, all right, yeah, I'm available.
Right.
You ain't thought about your kids. You forgot that soccer game. And I'm not saying that it's not okay to miss those things, because I miss those things sometimes now because, it's just life. But am I going to be going back to that impulsive mind? And going back to that imperial mind? There's a reward and consequence. You may miss this opportunity. Do you want to lose this moment? I had to sit back and think, like, okay, can I make it? And that was the capacity piece for me, right? Like, okay, let me respond. This is it's short notice. This is my availability. I would love to do it, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Like, I felt good about that, right? Because I'm not swayed by, 19 Keys, has however many followers and you may get an opportunity. Now, I'm human, so that initial reaction was like, oh. But because I don't want to, like, being in flow and truly trusting, like, what's for me is for me. I didn't expect to go viral. I mean, I didn't expect that. Like, because I wasn't even thinking
also
about it.
Also, the fact that you happen to be in Houston and we happen to be traveling this way was just very synchronistic.
And I thought about that
Because when you
too.
sent me the number, I say, where's she at? And I looked at the area code. I said, oh, we actually headed there.
Wow.
So everything actually just happened in perfect alignment. My brother invited us out here for his event for God Body Weekend, my brother AJ McQueen. And we were about to be in Houston and Dallas. And I think that it was more so just, I think God wanted this to happen.
That's that peace in that flow,
Yeah.
though. That's that peace in that flow. Like she sent that girl that I don't know, because she reflected what's within me, right? She sent me that message. She doesn't know me. She could have been like, hey, she could have reached out to you herself and said, I know where I can reach her or something for you. She sent it to me. She says, hey, this may be an opportunity for you. That happened. Reach out to you. And that was like 2 days later or something,
Yeah.
too. Like it's that trust, like that knowing that, like when you say like what's for me will be for me, like you don't sway away from that. Like you have to be grounded in something. And it's something like when I'm working with my clients all the time, they're like, I'm like, you don't have any substance. Like that's why you can't figure out how to achieve that peace or flow, or you constantly feel like you have to retreat, because when we say like energy attracts energy, people think it's about, oh, what's up? You got positive vibes. No, it's those beliefs that you hold on to. Like if you hold that belief on Monday and then it doesn't, it's not there on Tuesday, you can't expect to attract that same energy. Like I think that people misunderstand, like, oh, you're a good person, you have positive vibes. Like, no, it's that core, the foundation that you ground yourself in. Like, those beliefs matter. And therapy, for example, doesn't hit on your belief systems, because I'm so busy trying to tackle the problems that I see in front of you, because I want to offer you a sense of stability. I want to give you a sense of relief. I can't do therapy like that, because I just can't. I was telling another therapist the other day. She was like, you don't see your clients like this, because people say what do they call it, maintenance therapy, right? Like maybe I'll go every month because it's like for the gym, and I'm like, that's not what it's for. Like the gym is outside. Like the gym is outside. The gym is when you
But the gym is a therapy.
I mean, it is. Like, the gym is actually doing the exercises in a gym. The gym is life. It's these challenges. But I was telling her, I don't enjoy seeing clients forever. It's not fulfilling to me, because at some point, you become who you are. And I got my friends. I have friends. I don't want to talk to you and hear about your day-to-day life. Now, and that may sound crazy, because when you connect with these people that you're seeing, you connect with them, but their beginnings and their endings. When it's over, it's over. Like, we cool, I love you, but it's over. Like, I don't create that sense of attachment. Some, people say, why are therapists burnt out? A whole lot of reasons.
Yeah.
That's one of them.
Well, I look at it almost the way I talk about people who parent in a way where they're trying to protect their child instead of prepare. And I think that's a lot of ways therapists do. They're teaching ways to their client to protect themselves instead of prepare themselves for every situation, which means that your client should be coming in with new situations because they're way evolved from where they came in to where they at, right? Then at some point in time, they should outgrow you, right? And so if they're not outgrowing you, right, and the pace in which they're able to do that, you should be able to regard whether you're a good therapist or not.
Yeah.
Right? And so if somebody is staying with you, then at the end of the day, you part of their problem now. You know what I mean? Because you're one of those
It's a good
things that they need
example.
to figure out. How do I live life without you? Because you said it best. You're just coping with life. Life is supposed to happen. Go get cut, bruised, you know what I mean? Go through some heartache and some heartbreak. Feel it and then learn from it, then move on and then get better from it. I think people go through situations and become worse, right? Because they constantly look at themselves as victims.
Exactly.
Right? Instead of, oh, I've been through it. Now I got a goddamn master's degree in it. I could teach it if I wanted to.
Exactly.
You feel me? That's a different mindset. And most people just need to change their perspective and mindset on things.
Well, and something that I'm noticing too is there's a misunderstanding in terms of learning from the lessons, because learning from the lessons now is never going to let that happen again. I remember the last time that this happened, that's a red flag. Well, how do you know? Because if you trust that you've overcome it, is it a red flag? Is it truly a threat? Because you may be missing out on an opportunity. So I always say, like, if your learning is rooted in never again, I won't let that happen again, I don't know that you've actually learned or you've grown from whatever that situation was, because you've went back into protection mode, which again goes back to that foundation of self-trust and knowing yourself. You got all these barriers again. I'm not gonna let that happen. Last relationship I was in, that looks the same. Says who? Life is just trying to figure out if you actually trust yourself to engage enough to find out if you can handle yourself in a different way. And a lot of us don't give ourselves the opportunity to do that. A lot of us actually, in my opinion, we do have fixed mindsets. Like, people don't know what it truly looks like to have a growth mindset. Like, we don't. Like, and if we did mental health, for example, it's dynamic, it's flexible, it's supposed to adapt. It's not this static thing that you come and put it on a shelf and you leave it there once you have figured out like the temperature.
Yeah, no, I think that if it's not something physically wrong with your brain, then you're all right. And then the rest of it is just perspective.
Yeah.
If you don't have a physical issue, some inflammation in the brain that's going on that you need to go get examined and get a brain scan for and detox yourself and figure out how to get going, then there's nothing wrong with you, right? The thing is just the way you're looking at what's happening, the way you feel about what's happening, and then over processing what's happening. I go through a lot of stuff. I've been through more than the average person would ever want to consider going through. But I look at them as all good things. You know what I'm saying? I'm not about to go back into my past and goddamn be thinking about it and be sad all day.
Let me clarify. Like, this is, you know, what people will do is they'll hear you make that statement, and as I listen to you more, they'll say, "Well, you're rationalizing it, right? Like, it's perspective. This isn't perspective, though. This is a way of being for you." And that's the difference. I always tell people, you can't perspective your way into growth, consciousness, or flow, or peace, or any of those things. The people that are trying to perspective their way into those things, they probably couldn't sit here and engage in the conversation that we're having, because at some point there'd be a lot of red flags going off, because it would challenge some of the beliefs that they have. Like, this is a reflection of who you are as a person. Because perspectives aren't necessarily sustainable if it doesn't become a belief. So that's just me giving you, like, this not I mean, you may be teaching other people different perspectives, but to be able to do it to be sustainable at doing it, it has to be someone that you are, because you did the perspective thing already. Like, you've done that already. This is who I am.
Well, I like that perspective.
I gave you a new perspective. I gave you a new one.
So what are the most toxic things that you see that people come to you about relationships?
Toxic. I think it's the list that I see women create. It's the list. This what is it? High value men, whatever they call it. It's the list. And someone recently mentioned, God will give you the desires of your heart. And I was like, I don't think that's what he meant. Like, your list has nothing to do, because there's always, if we go back to holding multiple perspectives, there's always other things that counter that. Like, if you don't see yourself as, for example, wonderfully and fearfully made, I don't know that God's going to give you like the desires of your heart, because you can't see yourself in this, in his image. So I think it's the lists are toxic. I think it's this wanting to be felt, seen, and heard. There's this idea that if you and I are in a relationship and you don't make me feel seen, heard, and validated, that you're not giving me enough, or you're not pouring into me. And I don't believe that that's anybody's goal. I think that once you can do those things for yourself, universe, God, it gives you those things back. And I speak from personal experiences, right? Because I'm a woman too. Like, I've been there, right? Like, no, like, you didn't ask me this, or like, I'm looking for this. I wasn't able to give myself those things. So I think it's this, if someone's not giving you that validation, then they're probably not for you. And then that's how we end up seeing families not, divorce rates increasing and people not being able to stay together because we have this notion that, or we rely so much on external validation. I always tell people that external validation is the wings, right? Internal validation is your roots, and most people are not grounded in their roots. So it's the list, the felt, seen, and heard. And I think that we confuse toxicity with complexity. I don't, in relationships, to think that you are not going to experience some pain, and I'm talking about sometimes some real pain. I think is like, wow, like, because if I sign on to be with you, it does not say that life does not continue to test and want me to grow in the ways that it wants me to grow. You just so happen to be a part of my journey. And and because of that, I may cause you pain because I need to go through whatever I'm going through and you just so happen to be a part of it. And I think that this whole, like, when I think about toxicity versus complexity, there's a difference between pain and suffering to me. Like, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, right? It's, let's just say that, I don't know, I found you talking to a girl, right? And I'm like, I mean, I thought we were exclusive. Well, no, we didn't. We never put a label on it. I didn't know that we had committed. Most people, what they do is that pain, I can't deal with the discomfort of the pain, so I can't have a conversation. I didn't even know it was your cousin because the pain got the best of me and the pain led to the suffering. I can't have the conversation. I can't hear what you're saying. You've checked out, and what could have been something is now no longer anything. So I think it's that people don't know the difference between toxicity and complexity. And I think that in relationships, it's going to be a lot of complexity. And sometimes, like, that pain is going to hit in a way to where you're like, I didn't see this coming, but is this the person that I'm supposed to be with? Can we grow through this? I don't think that when I think about, like, our generations, when you talk about 35 years, 45 years married, you think it was all roses? That's crazy.
Right.
Yeah. So going back to this toxicity, I think toxicity to me is like, you're drained, you're exhausted. No matter how much work you put in, you feel like you're never getting anything back. Going back to the self-trust piece, in order to make the distinction between toxicity versus complexity, you gotta have a sense of self. And if people don't have a sense of self, it makes it very difficult to distinguish between the two because complexity feels hard. It's like my brain is going, I don't know what decision to make. I'm uncertain. I got to learn how to navigate uncertainty. I have to learn how to navigate discomfort. That's what I think I see, like, in relationship. Nobody wants to do the hard things anymore. Like, nobody. It's like, oh, I'm gonna protect my peace because this isn't right. I don't feel felt, seen, and heard. And to me, on the surface, it's like, do you think that people end up together for 20, 30 years because they experience nothing? So that's what I would say, I think, is the toxic things that I see from a relationship standpoint.
How do you think, like, because from that I hear endurance. You know what I mean? I think relationships are enduring for a purpose and for a reason. And I think as long as that reason and that purpose is there, then there's a reason to continue to endure. You should be growing and evolving. It shouldn't be the same lessons over and over and over and over, right? But I do hear endurance in that and the resilience of that relationship. And this idea that I think most people, they pick partners based on love, right?
Yeah.
And I think that love is not a strong enough reason to keep people together, right? There has to be more reason that connects you, and it has to be complex,
Yeah.
right? Because if it's too simple, then it's a simple reason why we also fall apart.
Exactly.
And I think people get together for simple reasons and they leave for simple reasons, right? But if it's more complex, there's family dynamics, there's wealth, there's building, there's, you
There's
know,
pain.
yeah, pain, support. Like there's all these different complexities. Then it's going to be much harder for you all to break apart, even grow apart, right? The idea of being equally yoked is people who have same support and goals and things of that nature. I think people think of it more so like, are we equal?
Are we equal?
You
Do
know
we
what I'm
have the
saying?
same value? And that's a good point because, you know, I recently ran into a couple recently. He was a Christian. His wife was Buddhist. He was talking about setting up a room for her to make sure that she can pray when she needed to. Like that list, to go back to that list that I was talking about, I think people miss out on their people because you think that alignment or being equally yoked means that everything has to be the same. And I don't think that it has to be.
Yeah, I think people are looking for picture perfect-esque shit. And I also think that social media has too much of an influence on who we choose and how we want to show up with that person in the world, right? What looks good in a picture? You know what I mean? How people want to perceive us as a couple, right? I think that that fits way too much. And I think that those type of things are reserved for, I think, a more wealthier class, if you will. I think that it has to be more rational and practical reasons that people are picking each other in today's time network. So like the list, most of the time people are making lists that they don't even fit themselves. You know what I mean? And most people are looking for people that are superior to them, yet want to be treated equal, right? Which I think is irrational in the first place. So you're looking for somebody who is above you emotionally intelligent, above you financially, above you in just about all those different ways so they can elevate you, but then you want them to treat you equal, right? And I think that that's hypocrisy, and I think that that's a bit of disillusionment, you know what I mean, for most of society today.
Yep.
You don't even deserve that person. Not yet, anyway.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, you could, baby.
You could get there.
You can get there.
You can get there, but
But
you're gonna have to do your work. Though. You're gonna have to do your work, and it's not all of that other stuff that y'all doing.
The fourth, last, but certainly not least dimension to increase one's capacity is personal leadership. One of the ways to become a better leader is to become a better servant, right? Ask questions, get feedback from those around you. But to take in personal accountability, then that means that you want to be intentional with your goal setting day by day. So therefore, you can become aware of the progress you're making as a leader. Great leaders are either leading by example or they're finding an incentive way to lead people. This is called indirect versus direct leadership. Indirect leadership is me trying to find a reward to get you to do something. Direct leadership is me doing it by example, so therefore it inspires you to want to do the same. Focus on how to inspire the people around you. Regularly request feedback from those around you, so it enhances your ability to become a better leader. Therefore, you become more adaptable in social settings and situations, and you learn how to listen to the people around you, and their feedback is entered into the way that you lead, so it creates an open environment where people want to come to you for more things. In order to be a great leader, you must be a great follower. So, make sure you follow these instructions on becoming more capable in your capacity to deal with life, right? Becoming more emotionally intelligent, becoming a better critical thinker, fostering better relationships, and having better personal leadership skills throughout life. Focus on these and watch your life flow. Peace, family.
So if you had a message that you can give to, I say, all therapists in the world, you know what I mean, if they were forced to listen to you, right? What would be your main message that you wanted to depart on that world as they're helping people?
The first thing that comes to my mind is knowing the difference between true and truth.
Mm.
For everything that we are taught doesn't have a big T on it. And we have to understand that humans are complex. Everything that we have in front of us is just a framework. It is not truth. It is true with a little t. Um, that's what I would say. That's what comes to my mind. Because I think that you are a better therapist when you don't feel like you have to offer people certainty. I shouldn't have to analyze your life with you and say you're this way because of your mom or you're this way because of your dad. And some of that goes back to my beliefs, right? Because I don't think like I love my clients, right? The greatest form of love is not understanding to me because we're not going to always understand. I don't think that life is meant to understand. I think it's acceptance. So,
Can you gain acceptance without understanding?
can you gain acceptance? You're going to make me think. Okay, I didn't think, but I like to think.
No,
Can
I
you
often think
gain
that we're
acceptance?
weary of things that we don't understand, so we don't accept them. So that's what makes diversity sometimes not a good thing, because we're in America with diverse populations that do things that have, different ethnic backgrounds, and we don't understand why. So, which is why we reject understanding those things. So it's very hard for people. We consider you to be weird because we're weary of you because we don't understand it. But that's why I like having long form conversations, because it allows you to gather enough understanding to accept someone.
True.
I think we try to consume things so fast that we don't even give ourselves time to understand it, or even understanding about what we don't understand and why we don't understand it, right? If you understand that, okay, what makes 19 Keys is a little more complex for me because of his lived background, behavior, experiences, beliefs, and things of that nature. You can accept that, right? I understand that there's a part of him I don't understand, right? And I accept that. Then I can move forward. But I don't think people take enough time to think about what they do understand, what they don't understand, right? And accepting their ignorance and knowledge on things.
I would say it's complex in the sense that at some point you may not rely on understanding as much. I do think that they go hand in hand. Yes. So I would say I do think you in order to accept is understanding required. I would say sometimes.
Yeah. Probably not full acceptance,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
think in today's society, I think it's probably even another word for acceptance, because now we so-called accept people that we don't understand. We substitute it by saying I don't need to understand you,
Right.
right?
Well, the judgment is still
Right.
there because if you go back to what we were talking about, being interconnected, right? Like acceptance to me means that I can see myself in 19 Keys, even though we may have differences. Like there's something that I can see in myself because I don't take myself so seriously. Like you are me and I am you type of thing. And I don't think that people can truly understand that piece because that means that if I go outside and I see the homeless guy on the street, like acceptance still falls within that category too. So you're not picking and choose how you're accepting. So acceptance becomes like, again, a way of being because I can see myself in anybody. Like I'm not so caught up in Democrats or Republicans to where I'm not able to take a step back and say, I can see myself in this person. I can see myself in this person. And then it becomes, it just is.
So accepting versus acceptance.
Yeah.
So, because I think acceptance is like something that you've understood, that you've taken in, right? But accepting is I don't need to understood. I'm still taking it in, and I'm still allowing it, right? And it's almost like I'm giving this space, and I'm allowing allowance for this thing, because what I do is that I respect people, right?
Yeah.
And so, I respect myself enough, and I'm reflecting that respect on other people to give that allowance, right? To say I don't understand your lifestyle choices. But there's a thing about my values is that I told myself I'm going to respect people regardless if I
Exactly.
understand or agree with them. So when you got agreement, then it's alignment, right? So it means I don't have to be in alignment with you, right? To still be accepting of you because it's in alignment with myself to be accepting of others.
Exactly. That's how relationships work too.
Yeah. No, I 100%
Just
agree.
across the board.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult to do too, like, on a small scale, because if what comes to my mind, if I didn't have these braids and every day I'm wrapping my hair and my hair is on the floor and you judging me every, like, well, get your hair, and I'm like, or it's the other way around, right? Like, do you not ever think about when you leave something on the counter or whatever, and then you build up all of these annoyances, and before you know it, like, I can't be with this person anymore because that accepting piece is no longer there because you've created this separation now, and now we're no longer one in a sense.
Do you believe in gaslighting people?
No, you see, you about to make me. No, absolutely not. I think it's so stupid, and I don't have any higher language for you besides it's stupid. Okay, I don't understand. I think that gaslighting is so. I think it's stupid, and I'll tell you why I think it's stupid. One, I think that a part of life, I guess in essence, you're supposed to get gaslit, right? Because I think that life is saying, do you trust yourself? But then at some point, I said what I said, right? Like, you're not going to change what I said to where I become the victim. I said what I said. And that's why gaslighting, like, it doesn't resonate with me. Like, when I had a friend, she was like, they're gaslighting. I didn't feel gaslit. Like,
Yeah.
because I didn't have to, I heard what they said. I didn't have to agree, but it doesn't mean that I've internalized it. No, I think the gaslighting is stupid. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
I do think that gaslighting, to me, if we take that word away, will people make you feel rejected, misunderstood? But all of those things are gifts. Like, you have to go through those things. It makes me think about like the 4 demands of existentialism, right? It's isolation, like in the sense of solitude, though. When you talk about, like, at some points you're gonna have to feel alone, and to me that is the gaslighting. So I think that that's a part of life. Like, you need to be, because do you trust? Do you trust who you are? Do you trust whatever it is that you stand for? Because if you try to tell me that this table is blue, I don't care that you're 19. Like, I'm going to, no, it's not. I'm looking at it. Like, and then we're going to argue. We're going to argue at that
I actually like that because I think that I think that these are tactics that are used in society,
weaponized.
right? And the reality is a lot of people don't know how to trust themselves, right? If I said this is what I seen, if I said that was a Nazi salute, it's a Nazi salute. I don't need you to explain it to me, right? And I think what's harder for people to do, especially in this age where you can artificially generate images, the media can try to explain away things to give you various different options of what it could have been. And it's like, no, I trust myself enough to decide that's what I seen, right? Unless I get information and data, right, that gives me a different viewpoint and perspective, then what I seen was right. Because you're not gonna get me to not trust myself. Because now you can control me by saying that, listen, what you heard, seen, felt wasn't real. And I think what you're giving people is mental toughness in a world that they need, because the world is not going to be kind to them, right? The world is not going to walk
And we
on
don't have to take that
eggshells.
personal. Like, the world is not going to be kind, because people take that personal. My kids are mean sometimes to me. Like, it's not interconnectedness, right? Like, you can see how the world is unkind. Like, your children are mean sometimes to you. Like,
Did you walk around being nice?
what do you mean being nice?
There's just being nice to everybody. I think that, like, there's a syndrome that pretty girls are often seen as nice and they don't want to tell people no and take up the idea, taking up too much space and things of that nature. So they're always being nice to people, which is, in my essence, a form of stupidity.
Well, I don't I don't get called nice. So I think people
So you
think
don't
that
know about
I'm
that, huh?
like, you gotta, yeah, I don't get called nice. I never have, honestly. I think that over time, as I've grown, I've learned to, at least I think I have, learned to find the balance between, I said what I said, but I still have a level of compassion and empathy. I always say, like, I can care, but I'm not gonna carry. Like,
Like
um,
that.
I'm
But
not
you have
gonna
a bit of a masculine perspective of life.
I'm grateful.
Yeah.
I am. I'm really grateful. And to be honest, one of my clients actually told me a year ago. I thought it was simple. We were talking about just like life and pain, and she was like, "You have a unique perspective," and I was like, "It's not unique. Like, isn't life hard for every like people expect pain?" And she was like, "No, like at some point you need to share." But to me, some of it comes natural. My ability to connect with people, or like the way that my mind, like mind maps, like when people are talking to me and I'm able to put things together, like I would like to say is education, but some of it is just, I think the education has supported it, but some of it is just, I don't know how to, I don't know how to not be me.
Do
Um,
you seek challenge instead of comfort?
I seek challenge every single day.
Yeah.
Like it's it- it's like normal. I used to, because they used to tell me it was trauma.
Yeah.
They used to say it's trauma. Like you can't sit down, like it's trauma. And like no, my seeking challenges has gotten me right where I am today. Like had nothing to do with trauma. Like something felt unsettled here, and I listened. Like that client, I always say teacher and student. I listened. She's like, girl, get some videos, like start doing videos. And I'm like, I don't, same thing. Like I'm not exempt from the human things. I'm like, well, my accent, I don't want to put my accent out there. Like, I don't think I'm ready to open up and people attack my views because my truth is not your truth. Because I don't want to use the therapy title and say that these are facts when I know that some of it is driving from my beliefs, right? So all of those, and that's the downside to being able to hold multiple perspectives, because you can overanalyze sometimes. But she was like, no, just start creating video. So I said, okay, I'll start creating video just to put it out there. But I wasn't as aggressive in my messaging because, people already say sometimes like she's not nice, but you would have to know me to know that that's not true. I call a thing, with sometimes with the expectation of thinking that you can handle discomfort, but I also can meet my audience I can meet you where you are. And that's the emotional intelligence piece, right? Like, I know that everybody that I'm talking to doesn't want to talk about certain things. So can I meet you where you are? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I don't know that I'm not nice. I mean, I'm direct and I'm empathetic. Like it's a lot of work to try and be nice to me.
Yeah. I think that there's so much of feminine perspective in the way that we deal with the masses today, right? Because we want to give them soft love, right? And like usher them into ideas and covet feelings, right? And make all of this space for how you feel here, there, right? That therapy has almost become effeminized. And I believe your perspective is a balance to a lot of people because seeking challenge is more of a masculine thing, right? Versus feeling everything all at once or going for comfort. It's like, no, the way you develop yourself is that you don't shy away from those things because seeking challenge allows you to become more. It allows you
Yeah,
to grow. It allows you to prove you are who you say you are. You
exactly.
don't want the world to get easier. You want to get better,
Yeah.
right? Which is a completely different reality for people to live in because they built their world around the world needs to be nicer to me, right? I need to be nicer to myself. No, I actually need to put myself through more so I can go through more, right?
Yeah.
At a higher level. So I see that with young men a lot today because they don't have this framework of masculine thinking, right? And then sometimes where they may be too feminine, then some women are too masculine without the feminine. So it's more so just the lack of alignment. And I don't even like using the word balance too much
Mm-hmm.
because I think that that can become this toxic idea that things have to be 50-50 in order
Yeah.
to be balanced. I don't think balance is 50-50,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially not for a man, right? Or for a woman. I wouldn't say you need 50% masculinity, 50% femininity. I think that's false,
Right.
right? It's like if you have a coffee, I don't need 50% sugar in here. You know what I'm saying? No, I just need a little bit. You feel me? A little bit of that brown sugar, and that's enough to balance it out for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's balancing things out versus this idea of balance, and I think that becomes toxic. And that's when people get burnt out faster, is because they've been trying to live life at this balance, which means that any point over or under is positive or negative.
Right. They can't adjust.
Right. And you have to have more so that mental fluidity and dexterity and resilience and toughness to go through the world seeking challenge, right? So that you become more willful. Listen, the world didn't change. Let me flow with it, right? Let me do the hardest thing first. You know what I mean? Let me prioritize what's important, right? That gives you focus in life so you don't have anxiety around these 1,000 things that you need to do. And I think it is important to have some frameworks, but people ask me about stuff like that all the time, and I don't always have them. I just naturally flow with life.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's much better, right? And I think you get good at life doing that, and there becomes a framework to it, but you don't always need to have it in mind so that you don't feel like you're failing if you're not following.
Yep.
And I think people need to get used to that flow with it. They need to be challenged with individuals such as yourself, because
So
you could
move
have
the
made,
goalposts. 'Cause
yeah,
that's
you
what
could
people
have
say,
made a
stop
lot of
moving the
progress,
goalposts.
but you keep taking yourself back to what they told you were, right? And now you don't even know what progress looks like anymore, and you keep thinking you can be reset. You can't go back. You can only go forward.
And I couldn't imagine living a life like that.
Yes.
I couldn't. If I got to start over 100 times, I'll start over 100 times. Like, I remember I was introduced to this foundational principle when I went to this coaching program, and it stays with me. Life is not a game to be won or lost, only played. And a lot of us don't want to play the game of life.
I like that.
And I'm gonna play the game of life. That's what I'm gonna do.
To end this off, I would love for you to give us your definition or idea of capacity and having capacity in life.
Capacity is who you need to become. It's when you take all of your experiences, you integrate them in a way to where the composition of your very being is shaped in a way to where you show up with joy, peace, love, no matter what's happening outside of you. You have this innate trust that I can navigate life with a sense of confidence and grace no matter what's presented to me. That's what capacity is.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you making the capacity to be here. You're giving us the time, the energy, the space, and your unique mind, right? I think into what needs to be disrupted, which is this idea of mental health. I think we need more mental resilience, and we need to be in mental flow and adaptation with the world. Peace, family. This has been your high-level conversation. 19 keys, and this is high-level conversation. Tap in with the guy.
So a good client does not focus on the how part of life or strategizing, right? Like, you don't need a bunch of steps, tips, framework, homework in order to figure out like how I'm trying to facilitate growth in our sessions. This trust, like, you're okay. You have a healthy relationship with uncertainty. You trust that because you're investing in yourself, you'll get a return, and you're not attached to whatever that return is. That's a really good client.
Yeah, I think people are using mental health as an excuse to not be where they want to be in life. And so therefore, if you're depressed, then you have a reason not to be successful, right? If you have anxiety, you have a reason to not show up as your best self. So I think that people are taking these new identifiers, right, in this mental health paradigm, taking that language, equipping themselves with it as this new identity that represents an excuse of why you're not where you want to be in life, and why everybody else, right, should understand that it's not you. It's this thing that's happening to you, right? So this is why I think it's just a lot of men being soft, right? I think that my pop generation, they don't know nothing about all this mental health stuff. They got to get it done, they go get it done, right? Depression rates went higher because they start diagnosing people with depression. You know what I'm saying? Like, all these mental anxiety is higher because you got diagnosed with it. But what is anxiety, right? So I believe that we need to learn how to learn how to live, right? Learn how to deal with your own mind, deal with your own stuff, and stop pushing that onto everybody else to have to deal with you when you can't deal with your damn self. The top 5 most common mental illnesses in the US is anxiety disorder, depressive disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia spectrum and psychotic disorders, which affect about 1% of adults, right? Most people don't have those things that I just listed, right? Anxiety disorder can be seen as excessive worriness, restlessness, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, muscle tension, right? The idea of what a lot of people think of anxiety is just their mind overpacing and overthinking, and they're constantly lapping the same thought over and over, not knowing how to escape that thought. I think that the population is overdiagnosed right now, right? Because there's varying degrees in which you can relate to some of those symptoms. So about 40 million of adults say that they experience or have been diagnosed with anxiety. The depressive disorder affects about 8.4% of population, which is about 21 million adults. The symptoms include prolonged sadness, loss of interest in activities, fatigue, sleep disturbances, and unaliving thoughts. Now, of course, anytime we have a conversation around depression, it's a very serious thing because a lot of people feel that they've been going through this for a very long time. I also believe in the nocebo and placebo effect, that you can believe something and therefore it becomes true. And that you can hear some of these symptoms, and because you may have went through 3 right out of 5 of them at some period in time, but as the psychologist or as our capacity expert and therapist Raquel talked about, it has to be over a period of time for you to be able to say that this is a diagnosis. And I think that a lot of people are self-diagnosing themselves with depressive disorder, right? Because they're trying to make sense of what they're feeling throughout the day. And sometimes it could be a loss of, as a man, you know, your testosterone is low because you're aging, or you're not getting enough sun, or you're not grounding enough, or you're not having a good enough social reality, or you are in social media too much. I think that we should also look at alternative reasons why we're going through these biological and psychological imbalances throughout the day versus just jumping into these diagnoses and adding them as an identity. Then we have post-traumatic stress disorder, which you could also relate to post-traumatic growth disorder, which is essentially changing the way you feel and look at trauma as a positive and how it's growing you versus something that's slowing you, right? This affects about 5% of adults annually, which is about 13 million people, who are often triggered by traumatic events, war, abuse, accidents, things that scientists say is constantly reacting in your body, which is then making your mind think of that situation over and over again, right? Having symptoms such as flashbacks, nightmares, hypervigilance, emotional numbness, right? Growing up in environments to where you've experienced so many events that are so-called traumatic, you become numb to these events, your body stops responding, and you become used to it, right? So feeling again and not being afraid to feel, I think, is the key with dealing with those things, but also changing the story in your mind on what is stress and how it's growing you versus how it's something that's slowing you down. Somebody like Floyd Mayweather, right, who went through extreme poverty, right, didn't always have a father around, and he had to deal with those things. And even Tank Davis, who talks about growing up poor and forcing himself to fight, that became post-traumatic growth disorder because he looked forward on how this bad experience is going to get him to this next experience, right? So you're always looking forward to things that will get you out the loop. You step out the trauma and you step into your new life evolving. Then you have mental illnesses such as schizophrenia and bipolar affects 2.8% of adults, which is often diagnosed in early adulthood, where you have high energy impulsivity, low mood fatigue, and this affects about 7 million adults. I am not a physician or an expert in this, but I will say, after dealing with family who has this, a lot of it is dealing with your body, detox, having your brain in the healthiest possible state, all of these things. We don't think about the physical and biological ramifications of not being in a healthy physical state, biologically optimized, and how that affects our mind, right? So I would say be careful of your gut health, That affects your mood, right? What you eat, right? Which has an effect on how you feel, which affects what you think. So I think that a lot of it goes into our food systems in America, which is why we have such a high rate of bipolar disorder, which is a real situation that people have to deal with and be careful of things that actually make it worse, such as smoking and drinking and other habituals that people use to try to cope with, which is where you usually see that high impulsivity swing happen. And then you have schizophrenia spectrum and psychotic disorders, right, which affects about 1% of adults, which is about 3.2 million people. These symptoms include hallucination, delusions, disorganized thinking, and social withdrawal, right? It requires lifelong management and often with medication and therapy. Now, these are real situations and real mental illnesses that people are dealing with. I've seen this in my own family, and I think that, you know, for people that are actually dealing with things that physically affect the brain, right? Again, there's a choice. You can't always help people unless they want to be helped. You can try to provide the optimal environment, situation, and attitude around those people so that they're in the best space, right? But when it comes to schizophrenia spectrum, right, you definitely always seek professional help with these things. And I would say that we are dealing in a time now where they're figuring out alternative medicines, right? I think that there's going to be an age of cures as we learn how to map more of the genome in the brain. And I think that particular area that we're going to be able to help with the most is in schizophrenia and psychotic disorders. But we have to leave space for that advert of society, who is usually a population that is imprisoned and homeless, that most of us can't deal with, right? And realize that there's real mental illnesses that exist. And so when we talk about mental health, we should also be respectful of those who are dealing with things that they can't help versus over-labeling ourselves, right, with mental health issues and not dealing with the population who really can't help themselves.
19 keys above 19.
The execution of knowledge is power. Teach me how to be a God.
From a boy to a man, and ultimately back to the natural state of being and to a God.